needs purification. Yeah. So we begin with liberating prayer.
O Blessed One, Shakyamuni Buddha, precious treasury of compassion, bestower of supreme inner peace, you who love all beings without exception, are the source of happiness and goodness, and you guide us to the liberating path. Your body is a wish-fulfilling joy. Your speech is supreme purifying nectar, and your mind is refuge for all living beings. With folded hands I turn to you, supreme unchanging friend. I request from the depths of my heart, please give me the light of your wisdom to dispel the darkness of my mind, and to heal my mental continuum. Please nourish me with your goodness, that I in turn may nourish all beings with an unceasing banquet of delight. Through your compassionate intention, your blessings and virtuous deeds, and my strong wish to rely upon you, may all suffering quickly cease, and all happiness and joy be fulfilled, and may holy Dhamma flourish forevermore.
I just want to begin by reading from the introduction to the sadhana of meditation and recitation of solitary Vajrasattva. This is the introduction by Venerable Geshe-la, written in 1990. In our previous lives, while under the influence of deluded minds, we accumulated a lot of negative karma, and we also transgressed our vows and commitments and incurred root and secondary downfalls. As a result, we now experience difficulties in developing faith and conviction in Dharma, and and in making progress on the stages of the path to enlightenment. Moreover, if we do not purify all this negativity while we have the chance, we will have to experience great suffering in the future. So, we need to be able to understand the nature of the laws of karma in general terms. How negative actions lead to suffering and how beneficial actions lead to happiness. Because we understand that all our experiences of suffering, the main cause are our own past actions, not just in this lifetime, but in previous lifetimes. So immediately to understand this demands a lot of faith in the existence of our past lives, and therefore the existence of our future lives. Because we're trying to free ourselves, but it's saying you can free yourself from suffering by following a true path. But it's not just for one lifetime, it's forever, for all future lifetimes as well. And so if we're just thinking about this lifetime alone, then we have little or no concern about the quality of our future lives. But if we understand karma, we develop an understanding and faith and belief in the general laws of karma, then this will enable us to develop the wish, develop the understanding where our suffering and where our problems come from, not just physical but also mental problems, and where all the difficulties that we experience in making progress on the path to enlightenment, where did all this come from? We think it's just an inherent aspect of ourself, normally, or it's other people's fault. Yeah, mainly the second. Any living being, even a worm or an insect, can commit negative actions, but only humans have the fortune to be able to purify them. We have been accumulating non-virtuous actions and experiencing their suffering results since beginningless time. But now we have an opportunity to purify them completely. So we begin to realize the relationship between our current experiences and our past actions. And this is what we need to be able to understand. You know, whenever we engage in any action, even in the present, we've done this in all our past lives, when we engage in an action or we have engaged in an action, it's like we create a potential. And that potential resides in our deepest level of mind. In Buddhism, there are 3 levels of mind: our waking mind, our dreaming mind, but our very subtle mind. And it's in these very subtle mind that we plant these potentials, and we carry them with us from life to life until the conditions are right for these potentials to ripen. You know, you can think of it, if you engage in negative actions, we have planted negative potentials. If we've engaged in beneficial actions, we've planted positive potentials. So right now, in this very moment, we have countless potentials residing in our deepest level of mind. Some of them are extraordinarily positive. You know, it's extremely positive to be able to sit here, you know, in KMC Liverpool, being able to practice purification. It's a very small percentage of human population in the world who is able to accomplish this. So you have very good potential ripening in this lifetime and particularly right now. But at the same time, we all experience kind of physical and mental unhappiness. Physical problems, mental unhappiness. And where does this come from? It comes from our past, from the ripening of our karmic potentials that we have created in our past by our past negativity. And that past negativity, since beginningless time, comes, the main cause of it is something that we carry within our own mind. It's self-grasping ignorance. Because we grasp immediately, when virtually after we take rebirth, we start grasping at ourself. I mean, we distinguish between what we perceive as ourself, that is imputed upon the basis of our body and our mind, our mental experiences. This is myself, and it's different from other people's selves. And then from that mind of self-grasping ignorance, we develop a thought of self-cherishing. I want to make this self happy. I want to free this self from suffering. But other people's selves, not important to me, because they're not mine. Well, and then we get close to people, and then we cherish them a bit. So because of our self-cherishing, we develop negative minds. When our wishes are not being fulfilled, things we want are not appearing in our life, and then we get irritated. And this irritation can lead to anger and jealousy. Also we have desires, attachment. We want to acquire things and accumulate things and people to ourself. And all the time, when we responding and acting upon these delusions, then we're generating negative karma, because we engage in negative actions. Negative actions that cause hurt and harm to other people. So we really need to have strong, deep understanding about this relationship between our past actions and our current experiences. Because this continues. We need to realize that two things we need to do. We need to clean up our act. We need to stop engaging in negative actions. And the way to do that is to stop self-cherishing. Come to cherish only others. And the way to stop self-cherishing is to stop self-grasping. Stop grasping at yourself. Stop taking yourself so seriously. And just work for the benefit of others all the time. And it's dead easy. Why are you laughing? What's difficult about it? The reason it's difficult is because our self-cherishing and self-grasping is so strong. But it doesn't need to be. All you need to do is just stop. I'm going to cherish other people. And the more you cherish other people, the more you let go of your self-grasping. It's an interesting relationship. It's like two sides of the same coin. If we have self-grasping, we'll have self-cherishing. But if we abandon self-cherishing, we become a selfless person. And where is the self? If we are selfless, there's no self to grasp at. And so we've found the solution to our problems. It's easy. We've been accumulating non-virtuous actions and experiencing their suffering results since beginningless time. But now we have an opportunity to purify them completely. We should make use of this precious opportunity to purify our negative karma, not to create more. So that sentence is telling us two things. Not only do we need to purify all the negative potentials that remain in our mind, our past suffering, that means our past, some negative potentials that we created in the past have ripened as suffering. Again, in this life, some negative potentials have ripened as suffering. But there's a vast amount more that are just waiting to cause suffering. And so we have to do two things. Remove these non-ripened potentials, the negative potentials from our mind. Like a gardener takes out the stones and the seeds of weeds from the ground where he wants to plant beautiful flowers, or where she wants to plant beautiful flowers. And then, because we understand if we allow weeds to grow, they'll just choke off any beautiful flowers that we want to grow. But if we get rid of all the seeds of weeds, etc., then we can have a beautiful garden. The same way, if we get rid of all the negative potentials in our mind, we can have a beautiful, joyful life, bringing happiness not just to ourselves but to others. And also, we have to stop planting seeds of negative actions. So we have to clean up our act, practice moral discipline. But these two things come from our understanding of karma. Karma is just telling us the relationship between our actions and our experiences. So if we want to have good experiences, we have to engage in good actions and stop negative actions. So the way to do that is to practice moral discipline. In the teachings on renunciation, the first Buddha's urging us, Venerable Geshe is urging us to practice the three higher trainings. The first of these is moral discipline. We can't expect to improve ourselves if we just continue in our old ways, creating havoc everywhere we go. You created havoc. So when Geshe says we should make use of this precious opportunity to purify our negative karma and not create more. Since purification is the root of future happiness and spiritual realizations. So not only do we become more peaceful and happy in the rest of this life and in our future lives, but we also remove the barriers, the obstructions to our spiritual journey, and we accumulate spiritual realizations more easily. You know what it's like when we try to develop a mind that cherishes others. Yeah? It's difficult, isn't it? Yeah. As you responded when you laugh. It's not easy. But, Geshe has laid out perfect instructions and perfect reasons why it's difficult, and perfect ways in which we can overcome these difficulties. But yet, we still don't find it easy. Why is that? Because we have obstructions in our mind. Until we remove these obstructions, our progress is going to be very slow. So if we remove the obstructions, then we can get to where we want to get to. We should strive to cleanse our mind of delusions and negative karma by practicing the meditation and recitation of Vajrasattva. This is a very powerful method of purification. So, I want to talk first about suffering and its causes, karma. So what is suffering? Suffering is simply an aspect of mind. It's essentially an unpleasant feeling that arises when particular external situations appear or things happen to our body and so on. It's a feeling that arises. We have unpleasant feelings, we have pleasant feelings, we have neutral feelings, but suffering is associated with unpleasant feelings. So when we get sick, for example, we develop an unpleasant feeling. If someone's humiliating us, we get an unpleasant feeling. If our plans are being frustrated, we have an unpleasant feeling. If our wishes are not being fulfilled, we have an unpleasant feeling. This is all suffering. So the issue is, where do these unpleasant feelings come from? These unpleasant feelings come from our own mind. They're aspects of our own mind. They don't come from outside. The main causes are arising from our mind, and the appearance of whatever is happening in the external world, and again, simply appearances, they're just secondary causes. In a sense, we've created the karma, the cause for these things to appear in our life, and they're secondary causes. But the main cause is the karmic potentials that we have created in our own mind. So let's say we've engaged in one negative action in the past. Maybe we told lies, maybe we stole a paperclip or something, engaged in actions of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, hurtful speech, divisive speech, idle chatter, developing a mental action of malice and covetousness, and deliberately denying the views that are necessary in order to make spiritual progress. So we've engaged in some of these actions, and then we planted a negative potential in our mind. So the negative potential, we're not aware of it, but we just carry it with us from life to life. And then a particular situation arises. Maybe we're experiencing the results of our past actions of stealing, for example, and somebody steals from us. You ever had anyone stealing anything from you? No? Good. Or cheating you in any way. So, in essence, we experience the same effects that we created. And so we experience someone stealing for us, for example, and we realize it. And so we have this unpleasant feeling in response to this experience. So it's feelings. Feelings that we have in our mind are the way in which we experience the results of our past actions. Feelings are the way in which we experience the results of our past actions. So if you're not having pleasant feelings, purify your mind. And if you want to have pleasant feelings in the future, stop engaging in negative actions. It's that simple. So, we can think about, part of the understanding of karma is understanding the 4 general laws of karma. We can't explain the precise relationship between one action and one experience. All we can know in general terms, if you stick your hand in a fire, you're going to get burnt. Or you lie too long in the sun, you're going to get burnt. You're going to get sunburned. In the same way, we know that if we engage in a particular negative action, we'll experience a negative result. So the first law of karma is that results of actions are definite. You engage in positive actions, you experience positive results. Engage in negative actions, you experience negative results. In other words, actions of any lack of moral discipline, any actions that cause hurt or harm to anyone in any way whatsoever, either physically or obstructing their wishes or hurting them mentally in some way, you create the cause to experience a similar result for yourself. In other words, you're creating the cause of these unpleasant feelings that are the nature of suffering. But also the opposite is true. You engage in beneficial actions and you create the cause to experience positive, pleasant feelings. So the first law of karma is that the relationship between actions and effects are definite. It's not probable. It's definite. It's not as if, if I do this, maybe this will happen. Or if I do this and nobody's watching, then I'll get away with it. There's always a definite relationship, seen or unseen. And the second law of karma is that the effects of actions increase over time, which means that even a small, either positive or negative action can have big results. If there's been a long time lag, if the potential has not ripened for a very long time. So maybe we engaged in a small negative action several lifetimes ago, and suddenly we experience a big result, big negative results in this lifetime. So often we're thinking, I haven't engaged in any negativity at all in this lifetime, and these bad things are happening to me. It's not fair. You ever feel like this? Yeah. I've led a blameless life so far, and yet I'm experiencing all these problems, so it's not fair. There's a nice story in Joyful Path about this woman who eventually becomes a nun. But throughout her life, she experiences terrible suffering. Like her children being carried off by dogs, her husband being killed by a poisonous snake, her family, his house being burnt down, so she has to leave. Then she's captured by bandits and married off to the bandit chief. Then he's killed and assassinated. Then she's buried alive with him. And then the other bandits dig her up, and she's forced to stay with them for a long time. But then she finally escapes and finds Buddha Shakyamuni and asks him, why is all this stuff happening to me? And he explains that in a previous life, she was a queen. And she was very jealous of some of the other queens, and did all kinds of negative things towards them, just in order to assert herself as the most important of all the queens. And she's saying, as a result of this mind of jealousy, this is what's happened to you in this lifetime. So imagine that going forward. A little mind of jealousy in this lifetime leads to a whole bunch of incredible suffering in future lifetimes. So if you don't want it to get buried alive and dug up later, overcome this mind of jealousy. So the third law of karma is if an action is not committed, the result is not experienced. This is interesting because it means that we only experience the results of our own actions. We don't experience the results of other people's actions. If an action is not committed, so let's say we're in a group of people and all the others commit a hurtful negative action, but we don't. And then in some later period, some later life, we all meet up again, and then all the people in that group experience the result of their action, but we don't. And we're all together at the same place in the same time. But for some reason, we escape from this this great crash. You know, some people walk out of a plane crash unscathed. Other people, everyone else killed. Why is that? Because the person who walks out unscathed did not create the negative action that resulted in their death in that moment. And so, again, if an action is not committed, we cannot experience its results. And finally, an action is never wasted. An action is never wasted. Every action that we engage in will always have a result. Every action we engage in will always have a result, either in this lifetime or future lifetimes. So you don't get away with anything. Yeah? Everything we think about, everything we say, everything we do physically has a result. So when we contemplate karma in this way, the relationship between actions and effects are definite. The effects of actions increase over time. If an action is not committed, you cannot experience the results, so we only experience the results of our own actions, and our own actions are never wasted. They always have a result. So when we begin to think like that, and the problem is, we can't see. You know, we have a tendency in the West to think, oh, if I can see it, I can believe in it. But we can't see this relationship between actions and effects. All we can do is take it on faith. If Buddha's saying it, if this enlightened being, this awakened being, has great compassion for every living being, has great skill in helping everyone, helps everyone, even though they've never helped him, and is free has fulfilled all their own purposes. They've nothing left to achieve. If we find someone like that, then we can have faith in them. And if we have faith in them, we can have faith in what they say. So if we contemplate the qualities of enlightened being, we can have faith in what they say. So when Buddha explains these laws of karma, we can have faith. We can believe it. We can incorporate it into our way of being. it will help us. It will definitely help us to clean up our act. So why would you engage in any negative actions if you know you're going to experience all the effects, and the effects may be much greater than your own negative action? Yeah. And it's definite, you will experience the effects. So when we think like that, when we understand karma, it really helps us to clean up our act and turn our mind to improve our cherishing of others, to improve our minds of love. Yeah. And therefore engage in beneficial actions. Yeah. Even the smallest beneficial action, we should never miss out an opportunity that presents to ourselves to engage in a beneficial action. Yeah. And we should look for opportunities, because in future lives they may have big effects, great happiness and joy. And you find it easy just to make progress on the Mahayana paths to enlightenment. That's what you want, isn't it? It's what you want to improve yourself. You want to become better, have more joy and happiness in your life. And that's the only way we can accomplish that, is by following the Mahayana paths. It doesn't come through consuming more chocolate. So, but also we can understand the different types of effects of actions. First of all, there's the ripened effect, which is essentially the type of rebirth that we take. The form and the location and the environment in which we take rebirth. So at the moment it looks like you all have a human form. Yeah. Any non-humans, So for some reason or other, we're not animals. We're not insects, we're not birds. Yeah. And so we have taken a human form, which is a fortunate rebirth. So this fortunate rebirth that we have is a result of our past beneficial actions. Yeah. So our beneficial actions of practicing moral discipline is the main cause of a fortunate rebirth. But also, not only do we have a human rebirth, but we have a fortunate human rebirth. We live in a society, we live in this beautiful environment of Liverpool, where it's right across from this extraordinary park. And we have the ability and good fortune to be able to meet Dharma and practice Dharma. We have all the physical and mental attributes that we need in order to be able to practice Dharma. How cool is that? Yeah? So, give yourself a big pat on the back, because in your previous life, and maybe it wasn't necessarily the one you had before, but in some previous life, you have created the cause for this to happen. Your experiences now are the result of your past actions. So contemplate then, now that you have this opportunity, what will be the results of your actions in this lifetime? Will it be even better than this? Will you be reborn in a royal palace somewhere? I don't know. Hopefully not. Wouldn't wish that on anybody. But would you have the positive karma to be reborn in Liverpool again? Yeah. And have the same opportunities again to continue your spiritual journey? only if you create the cause of this to happen. And only if you remove the negative potentials that would cause you not to experience this. Because we've no idea. You know, as I said earlier, we've created both positive and negative potentials, and we've no idea what's going to ripen at the time of our death. We can take steps to try and improve the likelihood that it will be positive results, positive karma that's ripening. But to accomplish that, we have to be able to keep a happy mind at the time of death. Yeah? So that we're kind of forcing positive karma to ripen in our mind. Not kind of clinging on, saying, oh, it's not fair. I'm experiencing this problem. And we're just joyfully happy, practicing patience and love and compassion for others at the time of our death. But how are we going to ensure that we accomplish that? There's no point in saying, realizing, I've only got a couple of months left in this lifetime. I better get down to it now and do all the stuff that I should have been doing all along. We got to prepare over a long period of time and do something every day. Because like I've said on many times, any particular day could be the day that we die. We don't know. This today could be the day that we die. We don't know. So the ripened effect is the form that we take, whether we're reborn into a human realm, a God realm, or realm of a hungry ghost, or an animal, or a hell realm being, and so on. And then there's effects that are similar to the cause. And this is split into two parts. One of them is experiences similar to the cause. So as I said earlier, if we've engaged in stealing even just small things, then we create the cause to have someone stealing from us. So that would be experiences similar to the cause that we have created. And also tendencies similar to the cause. When we take rebirth in a fortunate state as a human being, for example, we still have a strong tendency to engage in stealing. So let's say we have this tendency within our mind that's come from previous lives, from a previous action of stealing. We have this tendency, and so we have this thought, I should just steal this when I get an opportunity. We've created the cause to have more suffering in the future. We've created the cause for someone to steal from us again in the future, but we've also strengthened the tendency to repeat the action of stealing. And so we can create a whole career of stealing because the tendency increases, the strength of the tendency increases over time, every time we engage in the action. So even if we take lower rebirth because of our non-virtuous actions, and then later on when we're dying as an animal, for example, and a virtuous action is ripening that throws us up, the ripened effect throws us up to a human being again, maybe that tendency, that effect of our previous actions in previous lives ripens again. We still have the tendency that we have to purify in some way. So look at your history in this life and just check out what tendencies you have, what negative tendencies you have. Sarcasm, You probably don't have any of that. Sarcasm is hurtful speech, when you think about it, which is one of the 10 non-virtuous actions. So there's the ripened effect similar to the cause, their experience is similar to the cause, and tendencies similar to the cause. And also there's the environmental effect, the environment in which you take rebirth. So if you have engaged in stealing, for example, then the environmental effect might be that you take rebirth in an area where it's difficult to get to hang on to your possessions. It's difficult to accumulate things that you need to sustain your life. Difficult to get food, for example. So you might be reborn in Manchester or something. I read once that the average duration of ownership of a new Porsche, was 1.5 days in Manchester. So I advise you not to buy a new Porsche. So there's these different types of effects. And fortunately, Buddha taught in purification practice, there are 4 powers that will overcome these effects. The 4 powers are, first of all, the power of regret. The power of regret. Regret is like taking ownership of negative actions that we've engaged in. We can remember negative actions that we've engaged in this lifetime. But if we look at our history and examine our tendencies, and so on, examine our environment, we can recognize that all of this, if we think it's less than perfect, all of this is coming from our past negative actions. And we don't remember our actions from previous lives. But we know that we've committed many negative actions in all our past lives. And many of these have not been purified. So there's a whole host of negative actions that have not been purified. Venerable Geshe once said, if we could see our negative karma, if it had a physical form, it would stretch from our body to the moon. Yeah? So, if that doesn't give you an incentive to get on with purification, what will? You know, when we think that we have a huge amount of negative karma that's just waiting to ripen as suffering and problems, you know, it gives us a strong incentive to clean up our act and just get on with purification on a daily basis. And the thing is, the Vajrasattva, there's 2 types of purification practices that we have in our tradition. One is 35 confession Buddhas that overcomes our downfalls of our bodhisattva's actions. But we have to maintain our bodhisattva vows to overcome the downfalls of these. And the second is the practice of Vajrasattva. So why Vajrasattva in particular? Well, Vajrasattva is the same nature as Buddha Vajradhara, the primordial Buddha, the essential nature of all enlightened beings. And so when it's like Vajrasattva and Vajradhara have different functions, the same nature but different functions. So Vajrasattva is appearing in a slightly different form. Vajradhara has a blue colored body, Vajrasattva has a white colored body. But also, given that Vajradhara is the essence of all enlightened beings, it is said that in this fortunate aeon there was 1,000 enlightened beings. 1,000 bodhisattvas all became enlightened at the same time. And so they're all the essence of Vajradhara. And then these 1,000 are condensed into 100, and these 100 are condensed into 5, and these 5 are, because they're all the same essence, they're condensed into one Buddha, Vajrasattva. But like this, the 100 are condensed into 5 Buddha families. So, Vajrasattva's his function is to purify the negative karma of living beings. So because the nature of Vajrasattva is bliss and emptiness, and the nature of an enlightened being, the nature of their mind and their body, are never separate. Their mind and their body are essentially the same nature. So when we have an image of Vajrasattva in our mind, then Vajrasattva's body and their mind are the same place. They're in our mind. They're aspects of our mind. Because essentially our mind itself is the nature of emptiness. So everything that appears to our mind is the nature of emptiness. So when we just think of the image of Vajrasattva, Vajrasattva's body, then Vajrasattva's mind is in our mind. So from this we can understand that just having belief in Vajrasattva is like developing faith in the nature of Vajrasattva. He can function to purify our mind because Vajrasattva is the nature of all enlightened beings. But in particular, because Vajrasattva, his mind is the nature of the minds of the 5 Buddha families, then his mind is the same nature as what's known as 5 omniscient wisdoms. 5 omniscient wisdoms. It's the nature of every enlightened being's mind. So when you become enlightened, you will have these 5 omniscient wisdoms also. So during the purification practice, just by reciting Vajrasattva's mantra, it stimulates him to produce 5 colored nectars that flow down from his mantra appearing in a physical form as letters. These 5 omniscient wisdoms pour down into our mind and purifies our 5 aggregates. The 5 aggregates upon which we impute ourself. So there's the aggregate of form, which is our physical nature. There's the aggregate of feeling, the aggregate of discrimination, which enables us to distinguish one object from another. There's a group of other components of mind, mental factors, and then there's the primary mind itself. So these are the 5 aggregates upon which we create a concept of ourself, we impute ourself. So these 5 coloured lights, the same nature as 5 omniscient wisdoms, pour down from this mantra recitation and purify our aggregates, which we impute ourselves, becomes purified. Yeah? So if we maintain that recognition, we are just a pure person. The old contaminated person, all our contaminated aggregates of form, you didn't realize your physical form was contaminated, did you? And all the other aspects of our mind are contaminated because we have delusions, and we have self-grasping ignorance, self-cherishing, and all the other delusions. But when we're receiving the wisdom nectars from Vajrasattva, then these 5 aggregates are being purified, so we become, in that moment, a pure person. And all we need is the faith to accept that this is actually happening. We have strong belief that we can accomplish this in this very moment. And then we receive Vajrasattva's blessings, and we practice the 4 opponent powers, the power of regret, the power of reliance, the power of the opponent force, which is the mantra recitation itself, and the power of promise. Promise is important because we think, oh, I've purified myself, so I can just go back to my old ways. And then I'll be fine, I can just do the purification all over again next week, or next month, or next year, and then think that I'm going to become a pure person over time. Well, it's not going to happen, because what we're taking responsibility. Our mind of regret is taking responsibility for our past negativities, and realizing that we have these tendencies. Every time we've engaged in a negative action, we've strengthened the tendency to repeat it. And so somehow or other we got to oppose that tendency, take practical steps to oppose it. So the power that opposes this tendency is the power of promise. But you have to be careful with what you promise. Because if you say, oh, I'm never going to do this again, you kind of building yourself up for failure. Yeah. And so what happens if you fail? Well, your power of promise is weakened. And you say, but I can promise again. Well, who's going to believe you next time? If you're in front of a judge and you say, oh, I'm not going to do shoplifting again. And then 3 weeks later, you're back in front of the judge again. Is it, I'll promise really this time. Yeah. You'll end up in jail very quickly. So the power of your promise has no effect. So it would be much wiser just to promise for a period over which you can manage. Probably a period less than you think you can manage. So if you say, well, I'm not going to tell lies for the next half hour. And then you watch your mind. You really watch your mind very carefully about what you say for half an hour. And at the end of that time you think, oh great, I didn't lie for half an hour. So I'll try for an hour this next time. So you've built on the success that you've realized for yourself. I can do this. So you commit for an hour. And again, you just watch your mind very carefully and say, hey, I'm getting power over my mind, over my speech. And so I've done it for an hour. I haven't told a lie. And so maybe I try for half a day. And then one day, and then a week, and then a month. And then soon you realize that you've overcome your tendency to tell lies. And you're free from this negative action through the power of your own promise. But also realizing your capabilities. Yeah. So it's always better to promise less than what you think you can achieve, and then build upon that, rather than think, oh, I'm never going to tell a lie again. Then someone asks you, did you lie last week? And you say, no. So well, let's meditate then. So sitting in good meditation posture. For a few moments, just watch the rhythm of your breathing. So we can make a determination to explore the laws of karma. In texts like Joyful Path, for example. And to really think deeply about the relationship between our past actions and our current experiences. And we can come to the realization that the main cause of our current experiences is our past actions. The other people and situations that may be involved currently in our current experiences, they're just secondary causes. So if it wasn't this particular person who's causing me difficulties, it would be somebody else. Because I myself created the cause. They are just almost innocent bystanders. In my own karma. And so we can make from this understanding, we can make a strong determination to do two things. To improve our moral discipline and to purify our mind through the practice of Vajrasattva. To receive the blessings of Vajrasattva, to purify my body, speech and mind. So this is what we can do. We can meditate single-pointedly on our determination to receive the blessings of Buddha Vajrasattva, to purify our body, speech and mind. And we can do this with a mind of joy, looking forward to the person we will become as we become more pure. Not just in this lifetime, but in future lifetimes also. I will purify my negative karma by receiving the blessings of Buddha Vajrasattva. Thank you. So now you can relax your concentration. So in the second session this morning, I'll explain how to use the practice of Vajrasattva in conjunction with the four forces, the four powers rather. And so we understand how Vajrasattva works. Okay? Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, thank you.